Hey guys, this is Deepak here from digitaldeepak.com. Today I have Terry Kyle, the CEO of WPX Hosting, here on our show. So Terry Kyle has one of the fastest hosting companies out there. My blog, digitaldeepak.com, is hosted on WPX Hosting, and many of my friend bloggers' websites are also hosted on WPX Hosting. So Terry Kyle is also known for his love for dogs and other animals, and he has built his entire business around a purpose where the profits from the business is actually feeding a lot of dogs out there as well. So Terry Kyle, welcome to the show, and why don't you go ahead and introduce yourself to our audience?
Thanks, Deepak. You covered me pretty well there. And actually, as I do this interview, my three dogs are sleeping on the floor right behind me.
Great.
We've been out for a big mountain walk this morning, which we do every morning. So they're tired now and having a good sleep.
Okay.
But yeah, we as a company, as an individual, trying to help a lot of homeless and shelter dogs here in this country. For me, it's the main purpose. It's a big deal.
Fantastic.
Yeah.
So I know a little bit about Traffic Planet, and I kind of know that you used to run a forum called Traffic Planet, and then it was called Traffic Planet Hosting, which eventually became WPX Hosting. So why don't you go ahead and talk a little bit about how you came into the internet marketing / digital marketing industry, and how has been your entrepreneurship journey so far? So where did you get started? Would like to learn a little bit more about that.
Sure. So I'll keep a brief summary here. Back in the 90s in Sydney, I was a copywriter, a writer for advertising, and a creative director in ad agencies there. And I worked on accounts like Pepsi and IBM, McDonald's, Coca-Cola, accounts like that. I didn't enjoy that, and I'm one of those people who kind of has to have their own business. I just don't enjoy and function that well in some big organization or an agency. And what happened is in 1998, from my writing background, I started putting out a few books. One of those I put on Amazon, which was self-published. And what I realized very, very quickly was that just the traffic, the people on Amazon was not enough to make that book commercially successful, even though I had, huge dreams for it, like we all do for our pet projects. And I realized that I needed to rank that Amazon book page on Google. And in order to do that, I need to learn how to do some SEO. So that kind of kickstarted my, this is 2008 for that book. And that kind of started a pretty long journey in SEO. And that's probably, even today, one of the main things I'm known for is a lot of SEO training and software and things like that. But at a certain point, I wanted to kind of graduate to something that was a much bigger, more substantial kind of mainstream business. And that's quite tricky to do with SEO because you're always in this kind of spy versus spy game with Google, where Google is kind of changing the rules. They're reading what the good SEOs are doing with their research and things like that. So you're kind of always giving your best stuff to the enemy, who's changing the rules and making it harder, and you've got to kind of change tactics constantly. And I think particularly like in the last 5 years, before Traffic Planet Forum, I had Backlinks Forum, who was another one. It was kind of a Warrior Forum spin-off from there. That was in a partnership that unfortunately didn't work out. And then from there, I had Traffic Planet, then launched the hosting in 2013, towards the end of that year. But at a certain point, we wanted to grow out of just that kind of the forum audience, and we wanted to take it much bigger and more mainstream and go head-to-head with WP Engine and all those guys. So we had the name change a few years back to WPX as a part of that. And most of my day-to-day work is managing the teams here. We've got around 50-ish people in WPX at the moment, and that's growing all the time. There are a few of them behind me, if you can see them. We're in our new office. So managing, working on the marketing, working on relationships and meeting people like yourself, talking about WPX. And I think like most of us entrepreneurs, WPX came about out of frustration with what was out there and available in terms of hosting companies. So, a few big things that I really hated about the hosts, the bad big guys like Bluehost and HostGator and so on at the time. There were things like the support was very, very weak to me. And one of the fundamental problems, and we don't have this at WPX, and you might have had personal experience with this, is that if you have a technical issue that has knocked your site offline and you contact support, they will do the fix for you for free as quickly as possible. It's probably something quite simple. It could be a plugin, conflict, something like that, just something funny there. But for people like yourself, Deepak, your main focus of what you do is blogging and marketing and not becoming a systems admin or a web tech guy. That's a complex field, and we recognize that our customers don't want to become technicians, like systems administrators. They actually want to get on with running their blog about dogs or fashion or cooking or surfing or whatever it is. So what the normal hosts do when you have a technical problem like that is that they will just send you a link to a long article, a technical article, and they will expect you to understand it, figure out the solution, apply the solution, and this could take many hours or days for you to do that, and that's a very frustrating experience. And the funny thing about that with hosting is it's something that we would never accept in another area of our life. So if you have a problem with your car and you go to Toyota, the mechanic does not throw you the product manual, the car manual, and say, read chapter 6 and fix your gearbox. See you later. But that's exactly the way it happens a lot of the time in hosting, which seems crazy to me. So we have a pretty long list of things we do for customers for free, quickly. We call that our fixed for you guarantee. And we found that out of all the reviews, because we're number one on Trustpilot out of like almost 190 companies, G2 Crowd, another big review site, we're number one there on managed hosting providers. All of the great reviews that we have there are from this and actually not from high-speed servers and high-speed CDN. People love the fact that when they get in a jam and get stuck with their website, that they just contact live chat. And we're kind of independently tested at responding on average in about 35 seconds. So you're not waiting hours or whatever to talk to a guy who doesn't want to help you anyway. So we respond extremely quickly, and then most cases will get your site up and running again very, very quickly for you by just applying the fix that needs doing. We brought that in a few years ago, and I was never happy with that approach of hosting companies, of trying to educate you or me about, for example, SSL certificates. If I'm a surfing blogger or a travel blogger, I don't want to know necessarily all about SSL certificates. I want to get on with running my blog and my business and my audience, reaching my audience. So that's a really big difference. The speed is really important, and the way that we achieve that is kind of two main things. Is we only buy, we don't rent, we buy our own extremely high-end spec servers, and then we deliberately underload them, not overload them. We underload them with accounts to make sure that they're super fast. And in the last 6 months or so, the other innovation there is that we have our own content delivery network, our own CDN, which is applied to everybody's sites for free, 25 global locations for that. And we've seen from a lot of testing here and with Matthew Woodward's recent test that that CDN allows us to be way quicker. And I don't mean by a little bit, but sometimes by 2 to 5 times quicker than most of the big kind of well-known old brand hosting companies. So there are just a few of the key differences and kind of how I got to that point.
Fantastic. Very nice to hear that. And I have experienced it myself. So sometimes I had errors inside my WordPress and I can't do it myself. I'm not a coder. And I don't want to hire some random person from Upwork or some freelancer site to come and help me fix it. and I don't mind paying a premium, even though I would say WPX hosting is not that costly for a blogger. The price is still affordable. At the same time, I have been really surprised by the speed of the support's response. So
Yeah.
great job there, and I would be remaining a WPX hosting customer for a long time. So I
Thank
also
you.
wanted
Just one
to.
quick thing. Sorry, Deepak. Just one quick thing on price. I think, if you have a website that's important, obviously your website is pretty important to you. And if you're on like an annual plan with us, it's like $20 a month. And now, if you have an important website for your business, if it can't support $20 a month for high quality hosting, that means anybody who comes there gets a super fast experience. I don't know about a person's priorities if they can't go to $20 a month for great hosting, well supported, and give their visitors a really good experience.
Yes, better. Absolutely. And when you talk about the big bad hosts out there, including Bluehost, HostGator, they usually try to get a lot of customers by giving very heavy discounts, and they say $5 a month, $10 a month. But again, it's a lot of problem. Like once you install a website, once you start getting a lot of traffic, without notice they would just take down your website, and then they will send you a mail, and that's an incredibly frustrating experience. And most of the new people who come into blogging, they get attracted by, oh, $3 a month, $5 a month, and then they actually end up burning their fingers. So I think right now WPX hosting is the fairest priced hosting out there. It's not costly at all. It just looks a little bit costlier than other players, because they actually try to just play on price. Sometimes it comes down to as low as $2 a month, but uh, again, you get what you pay for, right? So
Actually, and I've just been working on a big article on this, on the Divi platform for WordPress. And when you go to the managed WordPress hosting at Bluehost or HostGator, and you're just paying on a monthly deal and you haven't committed to 3 years ahead, the price is often higher than WPX. Those cheap deals
yes.
are usually for the very bottom, worst kind of hosting on very old servers, overloaded, and you've got to commit to 3 years ahead. And after about the first month, you find it's a pretty horrible experience there,
Yes.
and you're wishing you could get out of that, but you think you're locked in there for 3 years or whatever. So quite often with the so-called cheap hosting deals, when you actually dig into it more, and you look at a plan that's got any decent kind of specs to it, the price is probably comparable or higher than what WPX is.
Yeah, absolutely agree with you. So I also wanted to ask you a little bit about the biggest challenges that you have faced in trying to grow WPX hosting, because we all know that from outside, when you have achieved some level of success, people just look at it, they congratulate you and they think you are lucky. But as an entrepreneur, one goes through a lots of ups and downs, and there might be some moments where you felt like the whole business that you have built, you might have to shut it down. So would you want to share some of those experiences in your journey since you began WPX hosting?
Sure. And I think before I get to that, I think something useful, one of my biggest mistakes as an entrepreneur early on, long before the hosting, was I kind of mentally and emotionally tied my success as an entrepreneur to one specific product. And when that didn't work out and the market just wasn't sexy enough, they didn't like it, it didn't sell well enough, I was kind of crushed for months or years by that failure. And the thing about a good entrepreneur is the loyalty is kind of to their commercial success and not necessarily one particular product or service that you come up with. You might, come up with a software tool you think is amazing, is going to be the world domination thing, but it just doesn't click or doesn't work for whatever reason. And the trick is that's completely normal in being an entrepreneur. Products, you'll 6 months, 12 months from now, you'll have products out that you didn't even think of today, for example, and one of those could be huge. So I think that's really important to keep that focus and be a bit more detached. Uh, Obviously, trying to deliver a great product with great support, but it just may not work out. You try lots of things to correct that, to get that market engagement, but sometimes you've just got to walk away, and it's just kind of not going to happen. It's always going to be a really small business. The thing about challenges, on the journey with WPX, for example, we kind of live in the era, the growth hacking era, where it's incredibly sexy to think we'll just change one thing and that's going to massively transform the business. Just go this one little Dropbox trick or this Craigslist trick or whatever, and bingo, it's going to be, instantly $1 billion company or whatever. And pretty much those are extreme exceptions in those cases, and a lot of the success, it takes a while to get that momentum going, and you've just got to get a lot of little things right. And even though it's not a sexy word for entrepreneurs, consistency is extremely important. You've got to really be consistent in your actions, and delivering great support, because you never know who that customer is. They can have a huge audience. And go out and say that you've done a great job for them. Consistent delivery on all areas of the business is hard, and a big part of it, as you grow, you have to manage people, and you've got teams to manage and personalities within teams and all of that. And it's kind of long hours, and it's definitely the unsexy side of it nobody really sees, but essential to kind of getting anywhere. But I think you have to have a super clear vision of your company values, culture, and your kind of fit in the marketplace. So I know with WPX, we're not the right host for everybody. If you have a massive BitTorrent website with 5 terabytes of data going through every single day, we're probably not the host for you. You need dedicated servers and a systems admin and all of that. We're just not the right fit for you. I think every product is not right for every single person. So you have to have a very clear idea about who your audience is, what's sexy for them, what's valuable for them. Like I mentioned, the stuff about we fix things for you and support, hugely important. WPX, the speed, also really, really important. And not too many companies are out there heavily promoting that. And with our current technology stack, I think we will take on any hosting at any price and probably beat them. Probably. Need to test it, but pretty confident on that. So I think you have to, as an entrepreneur, we're always attracted to the next shiny thing, and we want to jump from this to that. And I know I talked a bit before about walking away from products or services. Sometimes you've got to do that. But when you're kind of locked in, and now with WPX, I've been here for 5 years, over 5 years, and it's totally my foreseeable future, as far as I know, will be WPX. So once you're in, you're fully committed. It's the consistent, grind, good things and a few bad things, just every day, kind of making sure you kind of tick through those and just stay true to that vision.
Yeah. Fantastic. Thanks for the very elaborate answer. I can completely relate to that. And I think in this day and age, a lot of entrepreneurs want that overnight success, and they are not ready to, go through that grind of, let's say, 5 years, 10 years, while you build a great reputable brand. And there is no shortcut to it, right? You just have to sit down and do it, and every step of the way. So,
absolutely. Sorry, Deepak, just to add there, if you look at things like the first iPhone, if it was 1.0, I don't use an iPhone, I have a Samsung, but the first iPhone was pretty terrible, and that's with Apple's resources. But when you look 3-5 years after that first one, it was starting to get pretty good. If giant companies with unlimited finances basically struggle with the first version or the early versions of a product, it's absolutely no different for any entrepreneur. So you've got to scale out your ambitions. And even here, we have 3-year ahead planning meetings where we think about what software tools and services we want to add to the WPX portfolio, most of which, or all of which, I think are a great fit for our current customer base. Because we see in these other software like SaaS type areas, there's not a great tool that does X thing, and we think there's a great opportunity for us to expand and go into that. But we know when we start, it's probably going to be something like 2 to 3 years before the product is truly amazing, based on a lot of feedback and users using the thing. The marketing of it, the look of the website, all of that. So I think if you just readjust your kind of timeline expectations, not easy if you don't have a stable income coming from somewhere, but you have that focus, I think you've got a much stronger chance of succeeding.
True. Thanks a lot for that. So I wanted to get your inputs on what do you think about startups or new companies who depend on investors, raise money, and then try to build a business, and then they are eventually looking for an exit. Were you approached by any investors for WPX hosting when you started out, or did you invest your own personal money and do you own it completely, or do investors approach you? Do you say no to them, or are you attracted to them? And if at all someone wants to buy out WPX hosting, because big hosting companies always buy out the small hosting companies, right? And they do make a good offer. So if at all you are made an offer, how would you react to it?
Yeah, we've got a few questions in there, so I'll go back to some of the early ones. WPX has been completely bootstrapped from day one, no VC money whatsoever. So there are 3 partners, including my wife and the CTO. The 3 of us have complete ownership, no VC money whatsoever, and we've always been quite opposed to that. And the reason is that we couldn't see the logic in having our own company to not be an employee, to bring in a VC partner who is now our boss, kind of thing. We got out of being an employee just to be an employee again to a VC partner. And I think if you really, really believe in what you're doing, you're really fiery about it, you really want to fix this thing, I don't think you're thinking about an exit, and I don't think you're thinking about I can only do it if I've got VC money. The tools and everything exist now to do things so cheaply or for nothing that if you really believe in something, you don't need VC money. Yeah, obviously, if you want to design a new rocket to going to Mars or something like that, that's going to take some money. But for most kind of online businesses, you don't need a huge injection of VC capital to get to a point where you can prove that the market is a good market fit, people like the product or whatever. So for me, I just don't see the value in bringing on VC partners. It seems sexy to have all this money, but in a way that might also be quite demotivating because you don't have that lean guerrilla kind of hungry need to succeed in a way driving the team. You've got loads of VC money, so you just take it easy, hang out by the pool or whatever. I just don't see the value in that. We have no immediate plans to sell WPX because in a funny way, we still kind of feel we're at the beginning of that journey.
Yes.
And we do so much more and build all these things. I'm a creator at heart. I just love creating stuff. I've been doing it all my life with movies and ads and things like that. So I'm still really enjoying what I do, creating new things. That's really cool. Definitely not at all interested in an exit. As yet, we have not been approached for a huge sellout. And I think a lot of our thoughts on that would be who is it who's doing the buying. So one of the companies that to me kind of represents everything that's bad about online business is GoDaddy. I just hate the way they do this. They have endless upsells for stuff. They're really difficult to work with. Their support is horrible. The hosting is horrible. And the companies they have bought, they've just turned the quality. It's just gone way down. So I think if there's a good synergy in terms of what they're trying to achieve, what they want to do as a company. And this doesn't apply. The big guys are definitely not like this. I think they're just about shareholder profit, and that's about it. So I'd be pretty hostile to a GoDaddy type sale, just because I've always hated those guys, the way they do business. And Bluehost is no better, EIG and all that stuff. So at the moment, no plans to sell. We've still got a lot to do, a lot of things we want to create and grow. But, you know, who knows, 10, 15, 20 years down the road, who knows?
Yep. Yes, we can't predict it right now. So we have talked a lot about WPX hosting and entrepreneurship. If you are comfortable, would you be comfortable sharing numbers of how many websites or how many customers do you have right now, and what are the revenues like at WPX hosting as of now?
Yeah, it's quite a controversial topic, that one, sharing those numbers. I can tell you it's in the many, many thousands of customers. But what's interesting is that in the last year and even 6 months, the rate of new customer acquisition has accelerated dramatically. And I think there are certain kind of tipping points when you reach, you know, this number or that number of customers who obviously like what you're doing, and the word of mouth effect just begins to snowball, and that can accelerate a lot. So at the moment, in terms of staff, we're about 50 to 60, somewhere in there, and I think probably by the end of this year, it'll be more like 80 or 90 in the company at the rate things are accelerating. But one of the beauties of being a private company is we're not compelled to disclose any of those exact numbers.
Yes.
But to be able to have that level of staffing and financially we're very comfortable, not too comfortable, but quite comfortable. So it looks good for us, and what we're particularly proud of, I guess, is that bootstrapping thing, and we've done it all on our own to get to this point. We didn't borrow money, didn't take a VC partner along to reach this level, which I like a lot. Yeah.
Fantastic. So, what is your? We will end the interview with another one or two questions, and I wanted to ask you a little bit about, let's say, all entrepreneurs have a dream of, let's say, generating a lot of money and becoming very wealthy in the long term. So if at all, let's say, whatever you are doing right now with WPX hosting, and it ends up making you a very, very wealthy person, what are you going to use that wealth for? Obviously, with WPX hosting, you are providing amazing hosting, and you have this whole thing about taking care of dogs. But if money was not a problem, what would you like to build, or what would you like to do to give back to this world?
I only have one interest, and this kind of drives the people around me nuts. They're sick of me talking about it, but for this interview, it's all good. So kind of my semi-retirement plan is to build and manage a series of no-cage dog shelters. So unlike Australia, where obviously I grew up, and the UK, where I spent 8 years, they don't have an extreme homeless dog or shelter dog problem like this country and like this region of the world generally. So I would like to set up a bunch of these no-cage shelters where dogs are not in cages, but they roam freely in kind of quite reasonable sized yards. And each of those shelters could have 1,000 to 2,000 dogs, for example, quite a few. They make quite a bit of noise. So I would like to build that, but I'd also like to do it in a way that each of those shelters was actually kind of a learning center for how to manage dogs like this on the scale, and that information would all be freely available across the world through the web. So that, for example, you know, if somebody in your city, Deepak, wanted to do the same, they could go to my website and get all the information, all the nuts and bolts, how to manage this situation of dogs, the feeding, the medical care, all of this, kind of lay out the next level of blueprint for managing dogs, you know, in a way that's great for them. It's really good for them emotionally. They're healthy. They have a lot of contact with people. They get to run a lot. all of this kind of thing, and not just stuck in a cage. And the other big part of that would be to have a very good system of adoption organized, because some of the dogs here in Bulgaria, they go to Germany or France or Netherlands, that kind of thing, to get that working much better, where dogs from here can go to good homes in those countries, and we can get more dogs out of shelters and into nice homes elsewhere in Europe, or even locally. So I don't do things like, guys my age play golf, or I don't know, they gamble or whatever. I don't do any of that. All of my kind of out of hours time is spent with dogs, homeless dogs, shelter dogs, and things like that. And I can tell you, at least my experience is that money is a very poor motivator. And that motivation doesn't last very long when you're just motivated by money. But when you can see a huge problem that is on a scale that you really care about, that's massively motivating. You really want to jump in and not just kind of leave a legacy, but I think have a huge impact in the now on that problem. And I think a great way to tackle these problems, and we see it now with philanthropists like Bill Gates in Africa and things like that. Governments are kind of broken to tackle big problems. They just don't do it. They're a very bad way, it seems, around the world of dealing with problems. But it's philanthropists who come in with their own money, their own resources, who can make a huge impact on a problem. And they kind of focus on the one problem, and they just go after that and throw a lot of resources at it. And in an ideal situation, they kind of eliminate the problem completely. They go at it so hard, they eliminate it completely. So that's my goal.
Fantastic, very inspiring. And some of the best takeaways from this interview for me personally was the fact that once you take VC money, you kind of become lethargic. You don't kind of have that drive in you when you're like, that if you stop working, your business will hardly survive for the next 3 or 6 months. And you keep working and you keep working, and that has to be done consistently for years to build a really great business. So, and again, your long-term goal of this dog shelters without cages is an excellent idea, and all the best for you to end up achieving it. And probably, hopefully, I could replicate it in my city, Bangalore, as well. So Bangalore is like the population is very high. It's like more than 10 million people here, and we do have a lot of street dogs here. And I'm a dog lover myself, so. Nice chatting with you, Terry, and thanks for creating WPX hosting. Very happy customer, and I will keep you posted, and we will be publishing this interview. So thanks a lot for taking the time out, and we'll stay in touch. Bye-bye.
My pleasure. Have a good day.
Yeah, thank you.